I think I have a pretty solid plan to fix the college football playoffs, and it is completely takes out human decision making. Here's the groundwork. There is 14 teams in this playoff. 16 if you consider the Pac-10 or 12 or 8 or whoever a power conference. With that, it would go to a 16-team playoff. So here's how this works. There are 8 to 10 seeds. Again, you get into the whole Pac-10, Pac-12 conference. We're going to say there's 4 power teams here. Power 4, that's what we'll start with. So 14-team playoffs. The first 8 are going to be decided strictly by conference championship. If you win your conference, you are a top 4 seed. Now, how will those seeds be decided? Simple. First, they're going to look at your record. If you have the best record, you're the 1 seed. Second best, 2 seed. Third best, 3, 4, so on and so forth. With that, though, if they're tied at record, you move to a second metric. So you're going to say, hey, who has scored more points on the year? And I would even say in conference play. In conference play, who has scored more points on the year? Then you move down to if points 4 doesn't work, how many points has your opponent scored? So now you're getting into this of, hey, conference play really does matter, and it really matters the work that you're putting on in conference play. Does it mean more blowouts games? Probably, but stop them. I mean, And for the people who are like, oh, but they're just going to go and schedule 3 non-conference teams. I have a fix. It's simple. You cannot schedule an FCS team. That's first and foremost. You cannot schedule an FCS team. You must schedule 2 P4 teams a year. You have to schedule 2 P4 teams a year. You are allowed to schedule 1 G5 team a year. There's some G5 teams that can go in and upset some of these big dogs. We've seen it before. 2, you get into these power conferences. Yes, you may be playing someone that's lower on the power conference, but again, as I said, we see these upsets happen. We've seen it happen many times in many different places. So I think that it's actually a really solid plan. So with that, everyone's going to have a pretty similar non-conference strength of schedule. Some may schedule some harder games, which good. That's good, and I think that that's a good thing to do, especially if that's encouraged to play these really, really good teams. But with that, everyone's going to be playing conference play or some really good non-conference play and be able to kind of set themselves up record-wise. With that, so you have your top 4. You have your top 4 decided by their record, points for, points against, and if we have to move to a third metric, they can decide what that third metric is. Now, for your remaining 8 teams, I'm going to have this scheduled here in 2 sections. First is your conference runner-ups. They are going to make the playoffs automatically. They make playoffs automatically, no question. And we're going to measure their seed the same way we'd measure the seed of the conference champions. What's your record? And points for, points against, and that so on and so forth. So now you are left with 6 more teams. With that, how it'll work is there will be 6 spots that would be the 9th through 14th seed. 2 of those spots are going to be for G5 squads. 2 of the spots are for G5 squads. And that I love the idea of putting G5s in. I think G5s bring a lot. Like this year, I think North Texas can go in and make some noise, depending on who they go play. James Madison can get in, make some noise, depending on who goes and plays. But again, we're talking about no decisions made here. Here is how we are going to judge these teams on who gets in the bottom 4 or the bottom 6. So 1, you got 2 G5 teams. We'll work on those first. First, they have to win their conference, right? They have to win their conference. That's bar none, no question. And then it is then based on who has the best record. And again, I would say this, it'll be the same thing as the power conference. They have to schedule 2 group of 5 schools, then they can schedule an FCS school in their non-conference. So you're still getting that parity. With that, record, points for, points against. That's how you get those G5 teams. And then you have to go to a third metric, or you go to a third metric. Ultimately, for those 4 power schools, or for the 4 power 4s plus, again, where you put the Pac-10, Pac-8, however you want to frame that. Instead of making a choice as to who goes where, I propose that we have a benchmark record to get to. And that benchmark record is 750. You have to have above 750 to be in the playoffs, right? A lot of teams are going to have that record, so they're going to have to sit and do some math, do some sitting, looking through all the teams in FBS. However, if you have a record above the win percentage of 750, you can make the playoffs still. And there will be teams that have the same record, and that's great. But first, if they have the record, they're automatically in. Who's out will depend on who has the most points, who scored the most points, who's allowed the most points. Then you get into the third metric, which you'll have to get into, and the people who know all those things can decide all those things. Well, with that, then you take those teams and you seed them. You put them in by who's been the best. And then with that, your G5s, I think the G5s will be in that 13th and 14th slot. I think that's the best way to do it. So then you have your G5 school, right? You got your G5 schools in there. So you're still going to want to get down to 12. That's what you got to get down to 12. With that, you then schedule a play-in game. You take your 11th and 12th seed and put them against your 13th and 14th G5 team. So say you have number 11 BYU, right? BYU is number 11. Then you have number 12, I don't know. Let's go Miami, right? You have 11 BYU, number 12 Miami. Well, so in this case, you did have number 13 North Texas going in playing number 11 BYU. Then you have number 12 Miami going and playing number 14 JMU. So they have to play that game. It's an extra game, but you want to win a natty, go play these teams. And then you would go in, if your G5s win, they become the 11 and 12 seed. And then that goes back to the record thing that we talked about, metrics and all that. Now, a Power 4 school is going to take precedent over the G5. So if BYU wins and JMU wins, BYU will have the higher seed than JMU. That will be the one thing that's established there. But, so then, when it goes to reseeding, you will just reseed based on who won their game by more that week of playoffs. And then you go to who won their game by more, who had more points for, more points against, all, again, that same metric system. So we're basing this entire college football playoff scenario on statistics. It's the best way to do it. And we get into this conversation of conferences. Well, if you don't think you can go into your conference and your P4 conference and make some waves happen, then switch P4 conferences. Now, I would say you probably, unless you financials, student drop, those things, right? You can't go down to a G5 and go there unless it's what you need to do for finances, whatever. You can't go for less talented teams. You have to go from Power 4 to Power 4, but that may end up giving some parity to college football as a whole. I think this is the best way to do it. I'm sure there's probably flaws, but this statistically takes out humans having to decide who gets in and who doesn't get in, and it rewards people for playing conference championships. It rewards people for playing teams throughout the season and putting pedal to the metal. I get sportsmanship, and sure, to a certain level, yes, but also you gotta score to win football games, and you gotta play defense and let other people not score on defense. So I think that this is a very good way to incentivize good football. I mean, that's incentivize good football and put in the best teams in college football in the game and in the playoff games.